Hey there, welcome back to True North Reviews. My name is Ryan. Today we're discussing the new Mac DeMarco record, Here Comes the Cowboy. This is the sixth studio album from the Canadian singer-songwriter, multi-instrumentalist, and producer. This is following up his 2017 record, This Old Dog, which saw a lot of critical acclaim along with his preceding album to that, another one. Despite all the praise, the hype, and attention, Here Comes the Cowboy is my first full exposure to a full-length album from Mac. So let's just jump into my thoughts of the individual songs on here. This album kicks off with the title track, and it's very stripped back in its instrumentation. We get the country twang to the guitar, we get some minimalist kind of rim clicks on the snare and the odd kick drum. It does set the stage instrumentally for what you can expect. Also sonically, this slow brooding or burning kind of album. So right off the bat, if you don't really enjoy that, I would say this album wouldn't be for you, but for me it was enough to reel me in. We get some deadpan vocals on the opening cut as well. The only words that are spoken on the intro cut are Here Comes the Cowboy. And it is amazing how this song doesn't get boring for me, even though it is around 3 minutes of length, and I feel like it's pretty stagnant in its melodic phrasing. We only get that one repeated line. But as I said, enough to reel me in. Then we get into the second track, which is one of my favorites on the album, Nobody. This one is interesting. It's got this droning kind of brass instrumentation, possibly like trombone or a French horn. The lyrics are wise, however, they are delivered in a bit more of an apathetic way, which did get on my nerves when I initially heard the track as a single. But it's still enough to have me on the edge of my seat anticipating something as like a climax. The track Finally Alone might be that song that gives the listener that kind of sonic climax. At least it does feel a lot more upbeat compared to the previous track, Nobody. Notably, the spacing of the track is also filled up a bit more with different kind of instruments. We get the strumming of acoustic guitar, we get some bass, we have some claves and keyboards. Vocally, it still is mundane, as I feel like Mac does get stuck in a rut from time to time on this record, but on this song, Finally Alone, I feel like he does a better job of switching things up. He seems a bit more versatile. Instead of just going for this dull or bland speaking voice, he can throw in some haunting kind of falsettos too. Moving on from there, Preoccupied is a song that throws in flourishes of guitar licks that are pretty R&B inspired, make me think of some of the jangly or piercing guitar tones that we got on the Blood Orange record from last year. Preoccupied is definitely a calming track. It's one that makes me feel like it was composed outside, as we get some chirping of birds in the background, which I thought would be pretty annoying after the first time I heard it, but I think it complements the track pretty well. And then I gotta give some praise to the transitions between the verse and the chorus on this song. I feel like there are just nice bleed ins and bleed outs of the musical passages on here. We switch it up from the rim clicks on the snares to just the full-fledged snare hits. Moving on to the song Choo Choo, this one is a bit of an oddball in the track list. We get these plucky guitar tones that are definitely 70s influenced and are catchy. I just feel like I am a little appalled and offended with the repeated vocal refrains of Choo Choo with the train whistle. I feel like it could have been mixed a bit better. The vocal harmonies on this track are also ironically a train wreck, I feel. Still, somehow this track keeps me engaged. I just feel like the execution of the production and the performance could have been tightened up a bit more. The song K, you'll definitely think is like this passive-aggressive dig or poking at someone to say that things are okay. But actually it is a love song that is dedicated to Mac DeMarco's girlfriend. On here we get some more stripped back instrumentation. We get more of that focus on the acoustic guitar and Mac's vocals. It's definitely a sweet track, even though the lyrics have been penned about a million times at this point. It is pretty hard to reinvent the love song at this point. But as far as like my knowledge or experience with love songs go, I feel like this one is just middle of the road. It's kind of average. But yeah, it still has that personal tie to Mac because he writes it personally for his girlfriend. The track Heart to Heart is another tribute song on this project, although instead of being for Mac's girlfriend, it is written for the late Mac Miller, who Mac DeMarco got to hang out with for quite some time leading up to his death. As far as the song goes musically, I feel like the highlight of the track is given by the synthesizers in the chorus. But as far as the tune goes, at the core of it and overall, I feel like it's a pretty mediocre song, which I do feel bad about given that it is emotionally charged and fueled to be written about Mac Miller. However, moving on with the next track on the square, this one is the third single to have been released for Here Comes the Cowboy. Lyrically, I do feel like it's the most interesting track on the album. We get this kind of character who is exploring this dull or mundane kind of life, something that doesn't have much meaning. It might be controlled by Brother's hands, which I think is an obvious kind of nod to Big Brother or the government. And it's like this world that is just full of monotony, and it's this person that's exploring it to its full extent before they start to realize how boring and how ugly things can be seen. And that's when you call up Mac DeMarco, and that's when he's going to solve all life's problems, and you're going to see the alternative to things. You're going to try something new. You're just gonna reinvigorate all the senses of your life. All of Our Yesterdays is another track on here that sees that same kind of sentiment of calling up Mac DeMarco, and that's being explored to an even further extent now. Sonically, I feel like with All of Our Yesterdays, it kind of just encapsulates this sad feeling, but lyrically it's like that nice pick-me-up, and it's just meant for those kind of people out there that are struggling with some hard times. They might be losing some motivation for a new job or trying to keep a relationship afloat. You know, just facing the ugly reality, trying to stay true to yourself, which I think all of this is brilliantly illustrated with not only the sound of this album, but also the visuals. We get some creative and beautiful yet sometimes ugly music videos that were put out in conjunction of the singles. But yeah, just wrapping up my thoughts on All of Our Yesterdays, I feel like this song is one of the stickiest on the project, and it's one that you don't really want to skip. Skipping ahead to the final track on Here Comes the Cowboy, this one is entitled Baby Bye Bye. Structurally, I think this one is the most interesting or intriguing of them all. It kind of reminds me of like the meandering type opus or odyssey that Father John Misty or the Beatles would put together. You know, it kind of weaves through like the happy or sad kind of moods of the stages of a relationship before we get the arrival of the cowboy that we've so been waiting for, as this album is called Here Comes the Cowboy. Definitely by the outro of this track, we get that return of the plucky and jangly kind of guitar tones, as we do get this character who keeps saying yeehaw and just like get along doggy. Sonically and lyrically, I feel like this song just sums up the album in one song. It definitely switches up the depressing kind of vocals and lyrics and goes for more of this up-tempo feel at some points, and it's done in a pretty organic and spontaneous fashion. So now, putting together my thoughts on Here Comes the Cowboy, it does have its lulls at points in the pacing, but I still think it's a decent album. It plays around with the downtrodden moods, and it can still kick things up a notch on a couple songs, and it does remind the listeners that, like, hey, life can continue despite all of the hard times you're going through. Lyrically, it's not the most invigorating or the most engaging kind of album. It's by no means original, but I still think there's something to offer here for fans of Mac. With his deadpan kind of vocals, he still offers that same kind of support and love and compassion for people that are going through some hard times and just want to listen to some soft rock. To make this album better, I would cut a few songs like Skyless Moon or Hey Cowgirl. I feel like these are two prime examples for being filler on an album, or something that is just appearing to be deeper than what's on the surface level. I feel like things are a bit too cryptic and you might read into them in the wrong way. Overall though, Here Comes the Cowboy is a good album despite it meandering into boring musical passages. There are a handful of tracks I will come back to in the future, and I could see myself coming back to it time and time again. Just have to be in that right mood, and for now, feeling a 6 out of 10. I like the album, just not as much as some of the other albums I've listened to this year. Sound off down below in the comments. Let me know what you think of Mac DeMarco's latest record. Leave a like, subscribe if you're new in town. Thanks for watching, and as always, have a rockin' day.